Hey folks, Brendan here from Bluelight with what could actually be quite a long video, so stick with it folks. I hope you're going to find it useful because today I'm going to talk about a really difficult issue for the police service. There's been so much scandal that's been tipping out of the service over the past few years actually. Just recently we've had, over the past couple of years, we've had the Sarah Everard murder, absolutely tragic. We've had the Hotton Report into behaviour at Charing Cross Police Station, and now we've got the Carrick case. And I know this is all in the Met, but if you dig deep enough, you'll find that there's similar issues throughout the country. There's not a week that goes by without there being some scandal in the press about a stalking police officer or a racist police officer. And if I look at Twitter, I'll see lots of comments about how, well, it's a few rotten apples, a few bad apples. It doesn't mean to say the whole barrel's rotten. Well, I'm going to propose something here because I think the bad apples are a problem, but I think the other problem is the rest of the apples. All of the police officers who I love, and I really do love the police. I've been a police officer for 28 years. I've still worked within the sector with police officers. I've encouraged and supported thousands and thousands of people to join the service. And every week I run webinars for individuals, practice webinars for individuals who have this massive desire to get promoted and to do good things within the service. And so I'm coming from a position of love, and it might seem a bit of a weird word, but I love the police, and I love the police officers in this country for what they do. I don't love the very small minority who have let the service down. And this is something I'm familiar with. You know, I joined in 1985. I've brought to account officers who have let the service down. One of my fellow officers has ended up in prison for something that they did. It's not always been dealt with very well. Actually, most of the time it was dealt with terribly. And yes, I have been called a grass, and I've been called all sorts of other names for trying to call other officers to account. So I know how difficult this world is. I've been there. I empathise with you. And I know it's different today. It's always different today, but we're dealing essentially with people, and people haven't changed that much. So why am I making this video? Well, today, I know it's a Sunday, but today I've been doing some one-to-one coaching with someone who's going for a fast-track inspector. I ran one of the webinars this evening for individuals who are looking to get promoted. And the issue we were looking at was, how as a leader in the future are you going to enable a culture where ethics matter and count, where standards are high, where values are high and are valued? Similar questions to that. All questions around, how as a leader are you going to make things better? And the answers that we came up with to start with, I mean, this is just a starting point, were things like the importance of top-down messages. We're hearing that from Sir Mark Rowley at the moment. Trickle down, is the chief setting the culture, accelerated hearings from professional standards, better education, better training, backing those who challenge, setting standards, being clear about what they are. This is what came out initially. Being a role model for others, being visible, keeping officers on their toes was one of the phrases that came up. Reinforcing the code of ethics, stronger line management, getting comfortable with challenging, having a huge push to change the culture. So it's like a shopping list of things that can be done. But then we got talking about, actually, these are all things that have been done in the past. And there was a lot of talk around things like Macpherson, the Macpherson report. I believe it's about 25 years old now. What's really changed? After the murder of George Floyd, what's really changed? Me Too, what's really changed? The National Police Chiefs and College of Policing's Diversity, Equality and Inclusion Action Plan from several years ago. What's actually changed? The Race Action Plan that's introduced this year. What's actually changed? or is it someone else's responsibility within the service? And so we came up with some scenarios. We batted some scenarios around about the reality of the world, and one of them was around a parade room and a domestic violence case that's been investigated and has been readied for Crown Court, a trial hearing, and it's been well over a year now, and just about half the team were involved in it. And because the victim and some of the witnesses have decided not to cooperate any longer, despite all the support that's been given to them, the case has fallen apart, and the CPS have decided to drop it. And a comment was made by a male officer who's a bit of a leader within the team, someone who's got more service in than most of them, the stalwart of the team. I'm not going to repeat the comment because YouTube might not like it, but it was a misogynistic comment. It showed a lack of respect, a lack of understanding. And we talked about the reality of what would happen if that comment was made. And if there was a young officer sat next to that officer with 6 months service in, they're on the PCDA, they've joined with the highest of values, the highest of standards, and they want to do good in the world. And I think that's what most police officers join with. Certainly the thousands who I've helped support to join the police, I'd say that 99.999% of them have those high standards, those high values before they join the police service. But then something happens. And then we talked about that, what that something happens is. So the first scenario was the officer actually challenges the behaviour and speaks out and says, I didn't appreciate hearing that. I think it's disrespectful. I think it's misogynistic. And it shows a lack of understanding for the victim. And we talked about what would happen there, what would happen in that scenario. Every officer I spoke to today came up with the same word: ostracised. And I get that because I've been the ostracised. I've been there. I know what it's like to be the ostracised when you stand up to do the right thing. Did we think that was acceptable? No, we didn't. So the next scenario was the officer goes to Sarge because Sarge didn't hear the comment. It was at the end of the parade room table. There's a few sniggers and sneers and a few people going, yeah, dead right. Yeah, I worked on that case, and next time she reports it. And a couple of little comments, but Sarge didn't hear it, or maybe Sarge heard it but decided just to let it go for whatever reason. And the same result came out among all the officers I spoke to today. They all said the same thing, that the sergeant would probably have a word. And that'd be it. That'd be it. They'd have a word. They'd want to keep the balance on the team. They want a big investigation. Now, some of the officers I spoke to said, I hope that I would be the officer. I hope that I'd be the sergeant or the inspector who would run with this and deal with it properly, and it would probably result in management advice, which was very encouraging. But they all came up with the reality, the probable reality, and I stand to be challenged on this, and please do, but the probable reality is that they'd just have a word. And it might get recorded in a day book, but it probably wouldn't get recorded on all the forms, and it probably wouldn't hit the point where it becomes formal management advice. Because that might require other officers to be spoken to who were sat around. Did you hear this? Now, the one thing I was taught when I joined GMP after serving in two forces from 85 to 92, I joined GMP in 1992, I was even told this by the Federation rep, that if professional standards, the Y department as it was known back then, ever come to speak to you, you're best off just saying, I can confirm I was there, but I neither heard or saw anything untoward. And that was the culture back then. If you spoke out, you were a grass. No one actually appreciated you speaking out. But that's just my lived experience. So we talked about, this is now 2023. This is not the 90s anymore. This is 2023. We've now got a code of ethics as well. But yet we're still faced with this issue of just have a word. And that was a phrase that every officer used today. I'd have a word. No, not I'd have a word, but they'd probably have a word. Because remember, these officers are aspiring to better than this. And so then we took it one step further. That they didn't do any of that. They didn't feel comfortable, but they used a whistleblower line. And most forces, I think all forces have something like this now, a direct line to PSD. And there's a variety of different responses as to what would probably happen, but it would be at best a fairly long drawn out investigation that would probably just result in management advice. But it would become clear through that who the person was who'd spoken to the whistleblowing line, and they'd get labelled a grass. We also took it one step further and battered around the concept of that particular officer saying something to another member of the team to say, actually, I know I'm going now, but I just wanted to have a chat with you and just say that it was me. And then they go and tell the rest of the team. The other person tells the rest of the team, and they get labelled a grass. And their career is difficult. And it's probably going to cause them either to do one of two things. Either leave the police or acquiesce and become part of the problem. So these are sort of things we discuss because these are sort of questions you're going to get on your promotion boards. How will you in the future? Well, you might get a presentation on this, 10-minute presentation. How are you going to deliver on this latest priority? And it is a priority. We've heard the likes of Chief Constable of British Transport Police, Lucy Dorsey, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Lee Freeman from Humberside Police talking about the threat to the very legitimacy of the police service in the United Kingdom. The greatest threat to legitimacy. Words like that I've never heard before. So is it a priority? Damn right it's a priority. So what are we going to do about it? And then we went back to the shopping list. But these are all things that have been tried before. And they haven't worked. They might have worked a bit. But honestly, have things really changed? So then we talked about this concept of, okay, we've got systems and processes. We've got the Mark Rowley approach of ruthlessly, that was a phrase he used, ruthlessly seek out those who, and there'll be accelerated hearings and they'll be out of the job. Great, we've got that. That deals with the problem, but does it? Because one of the things that we talked about, which I thought was really interesting, is how actually the biggest problem is all the apples around the rotten apple. Because of exactly what we talked about with this little case that we came up with. We're not talking about caught out on the streets using racist language in front of members of the public. We're talking about in the parade room and how that would probably go. Now, I know some of you are going to go, not in my force, not in my team. You know, well, let's not get defensive because I'm seeing a lot of that on Twitter. And actually, it's not going down very well with communities. And I don't think it looks very good. This sort of, well, if a teacher did it, then we wouldn't label all teachers as rapists, would we? And that defensiveness is not going to get the police service out of this sticky mess. And it is a mess. From my perspective, it's a mess, but it's been one that's taken, you know, it's not an overnight thing. This has been something that's been building up a head of steam for years, ever since I joined. I loved the police. I loved being a police officer, but the hardest times in my career was when I had to challenge behaviour, which was now misconduct. When I've had to challenge corruption. I challenged a detective who tried to get me to rewrite my pocket notebook because I'd written that he didn't admit to anything when he was arrested, when the detective has got something completely different, something made up as an admission of guilt in their pocket notebook. You know, stuff like that, and the racist comments and the sexist comments and the assaults on prisoners and all of those things. Yeah, I've been there. So look, I know what it's like. I've seen this head of steam building up and building up and building up and building up. No surprise GMP, my old force GMP, went into special measures where behaviour which was not just borderline unethical, it was unethical, was actually encouraged around how we cuff crimes and how we fabricate detections. And yeah, that's a subject of another video, but it's been a long time coming, this. The jokes, the misogynistic behaviour, it's just banter. Can't you get a bit of banter? Or, you're not at the training school now, you know. Yeah, I've heard it all before. and according to a lot of the officers I support through promotion, that world's not changed that much. You know, if we have a really good look at ourselves, that world hasn't changed too much. It's changed, but I'm not convinced it's really changed. I think it might have just gone a little bit more underground in the WhatsApp groups and various other places. So, we need a better idea. To quote, I think what's his name, the colonel in the US Air Force video, which I admired. I wish I had his name. It's Colonel J something or other. When he came across some racist behaviour in his Air Force Academy. And he talked about a better idea. He talked about the better idea being, if you can't respect others, and if you can't get along with others and respect other people no matter what their background, then I've got an idea for you. Get out. Yeah, I really like that speech. I'll see if I can tag it in the comments on YouTube just below. Actually, I'll tag it in the narrative that's just below. It's really well worth watching. Right, we've got that. Great. But how are we going to manage the teams, our teams as sergeants and inspectors? How are we going to enable them to get through this? You can't get people to change. It's not something that happens. You can't drive change. You can't make people change. They've got to want to do it themselves. So we came up with a better idea. One that actually some of my candidates are actually trying, and they're finding that they're getting remarkable results. And it's very simple. We're going to enable the team to come up with a vision of what could be. We're not going to focus on the problems of today. We're not going to focus on the problems of yesterday. We're going to build on what they're proud of. And this is a starting question. Because we're going to have to give them time and space to do this. Because at the moment, what I'm hearing is the trickle down. Sounds like 5 minutes on a briefing about Carrick or Sarah Everard's tragic murder, bless her soul, or all the other scandals that keep tipping out of police forces. And if anyone says, no, you got it wrong, there's not a load of scandals, look, I'm quite happy to have that conversation. And it'll take me about 5 minutes to come up with 10 from the past 2 weeks, easily 10 from all around the country, or more. Just have to Google the name of the force and the word misconduct. And it'll bring it all up. It'll bring up all the news. It's a non-stop avalanche at the moment, and it's got to stop. But it's not just going to stop because of getting rid of the bad apples. We need to help and support and enable all the apples around them to be what they always wanted to be. Vision setting. And so there's this model that we use that's based on an organizational development theory. It's one that I was actually doing unconsciously until one of my friends, who's an expert on this, said, what you're doing is actually appreciative inquiry there. And that was me thinking I'd come up with a new idea. No, I hadn't. But it starts off with that sense of finding out what people are proud of, what the team's proud of, because there will be things that they're proud of in respect of values and standards and ethics. And by the way, the other thing we talked about was actually what we're talking about with those case studies before was actually a breach of the law of this land, because the code of ethics actually has a requirement in it, and the code of ethics is the law of this land. It's not a would you, could you please, it's not guidance. If you witness misconduct, and everyone I've spoken to today, all the officers I've been working with today, all agreed that that little case study is misconduct. Well, the code of ethics makes a requirement for you to do 3 things, not a request, it's a requirement that you must challenge it, question it, report it, full stop. That's the law. So we also look at things like, in our webinars, we look at things like organizational justice, because that's what this is, and how that influences procedural justice, how we behave on the outside. So if we can't behave on the inside according to the law of this country that we're proud to be part of, that we're proud to serve as crown servants, as the servants of His Majesty, and as I was a servant of Her Majesty, and that meant a lot to me, then if we can't comply with the law of the person we're meant to be serving, the boss, then we've got a big problem. Anyway, so back to the solution, which I'd like you to be part of. I'd like you to come and join us in these webinars, because I believe you'll get a lot out of them if you're looking for promotion, because you don't know what you don't know. And the 37 years of my experience might be able to help you here. It's something I've been doing now for 27 years, coaching and supporting people, helping people to succeed in promotion boards. And it's this concept of a more appreciative conversation, one where we are enabling others to set the vision for themselves, to own that vision, not own the problem. No, we don't want to own no one wants to own problems, but you want to own a vision for the future, one that you can buy into because it's your vision. There's ways we can do this, very simple ways we can do this. And these ways are already causing people to completely ace their boards, ace their fast-track inspectors, getting feedback like exceptional, boards overrunning from 45 minutes to almost 2 hours, whilst the board members discuss, so how would this actually work? This is what we focus on in our webinars. We don't focus on what was done yesterday and today. We focus on what could be done tomorrow. And it's all based on theory. It's all based on what works, not always within the police service, but we use what works in other sectors. Ideas and concepts from the world of organisational development and change management. This is what we look at, and how we can implement new and different solutions where we enable. We're not so much a manager or a leader, we're the enabler of our team. And that's the approach we take, and it's working. And I'm so pleased to hear the positive results of people who are actually trying these methods. So I'd love for you to come and try these methods with us. And it's been a bit long video. If you're at this point now, thank you very much for listening, and I hope it's been valuable for you. I hope it's got you questioning, asking questions. Asking questions is one of the most powerful things you can do as a manager. Check the links below to come and join us. And if you do like this video, then please do press that like button and subscribe. And if you've got any comments, just ask below. Just put, hey Brendan, I want to ask a question. Or hey Brendan, I don't agree with you. You know, do let me know. I don't mind people disagreeing with me. I think it's great. That's what we're here for. This dialogue that's going to take us one step closer to where we need to be in the service. And if I can just help nudge the service, no. Am I nudging it? No. If I can just help enable others to enable others, then yeah, I've done my job. I've done my job in some small part. So I hope all of this made sense. If any of it doesn't and you want to clarify anything with me, then please do ask, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you. And I'll catch up with you very soon, folks. Bye-bye for now.